Have you ever had the unsettling feeling that your life keeps changing on the outside, but somehow the same pain keeps finding you anyway? Maybe over the last 10 years you've changed jobs, moved to a different apartment, built a new routine, even surrounded yourself with different people. From the outside, it looks like progress. It looks like movement. It looks like a brand new chapter. But if you stop for one honest moment and listen beneath all the noise, does it really feel different inside? Why does the same quiet anxiety about money still show up, even when your bank account looks better than it used to? Why does loneliness still find its way into your chest, even when you're in a relationship or standing in the middle of a crowded room? Why do the same emotional conflicts keep repeating themselves, only with different faces, different places, and different details? It can feel like life is changing costumes while performing the exact same script. Like you're watching the same movie over and over again, just with a new cast of characters. Most people call that fate. Some call it bad luck. Others try to tell themselves that this is just how adulthood works. But what if that explanation is far too shallow? What if your life is not repeating because you are cursed, unlucky, or broken? What if something much deeper is happening beneath the surface of your awareness? Welcome to the Inner Code. Tonight, I want to invite you into a possibility that may change the way you understand your entire past. In the language of the Akashic field, these repeating patterns are not called fate. They are more like suspended data, unfinished emotional material still running silently in the background of your mind and body. And here is where it gets even more unsettling. Many of the choices you believe are completely your own may not be as free as they seem. The people you feel drawn to, the kind of work you keep choosing, the way you react under pressure, the type of pain that returns again and again. These patterns may be shaped by an invisible operating system buried underneath conscious thought. That hidden system may have been written long before you had words for your feelings. It may have been formed in childhood, absorbed from your parents' fears, or even carried through generations as emotional inheritance. In that sense, what many people call karma is not divine punishment at all. It is unresolved memory. It is unprocessed pain. It is like a corrupted file inside the inner system, forcing the same pattern to replay until it is finally seen, understood, and released. And if that idea hits something deep inside you, stay with me, because what comes next may explain why your life has felt like a loop, and more importantly, how to break it. If you've stayed with me this far, then chances are you are not here for another shallow motivational message. You're not here to be told to just smile more, think happy thoughts, or pretend everything is fine while something inside you is quietly unraveling. You've lived too much life for that. You've seen what success feels like, and you've also felt the silence that comes after disappointment. At this stage, what you're really looking for is not more performance, not more pressure, and not another polished version of positive thinking. What you want now is peace. Real peace. The kind that does not collapse the moment life becomes difficult again. And that is exactly why this conversation matters. Because this is not about decorating pain with pretty words. This is about going beneath the surface and looking directly at the root of the pattern itself. We are not going to treat karma like superstition, fear, or mystical punishment. We are going to examine it through the lens of how the brain works, how the subconscious stores experience, and how emotional energy continues shaping behavior long after the original event has passed. We are going to ask the deeper questions most people avoid. Why do human beings keep returning to the same painful emotions even when they say they want something different? Why do so many people unconsciously repeat the emotional life of their parents? Why does the same kind of wound keep appearing in different forms throughout a lifetime? And more importantly, how do you stop it? As we move forward, I'm going to introduce tools that are not meant to impress you, but to help you interrupt the cycle at its source. We'll explore Ho'oponopono as a way of clearing emotional residue, the idea of 0 point as a state of inner reset, and the practice of cutting unhealthy energetic ties that continue draining you long after the moment should have ended. But here is the part that makes this deeper than self-help. When you heal something real inside yourself, you are not only changing your own life. You may also be preventing that same pain from being passed into the next generation. In that sense, your healing is not just personal. It becomes relational, ancestral, and even protective. What you transform in yourself today may become the peace your children never have to fight for tomorrow. At this point, we need to confront one of the most deeply rooted misunderstandings about karma. For many people, the word immediately brings up an image of a cosmic courtroom somewhere in the universe, a place where every action is recorded, every mistake is judged, and some invisible force is quietly deciding what you deserve in return. In that picture, karma becomes a kind of spiritual punishment system, a divine balance sheet where good deeds earn rewards and bad ones earn suffering. And without realizing it, many people begin to carry a quiet sense of guilt because of that belief. They start interpreting every hardship in their lives as evidence that they must have done something wrong. If money disappears, they assume they deserve to struggle. If relationships fall apart, they believe they must somehow be unworthy of love. If illness or loss arrives, they begin to see it as some invisible sentence being carried out. But this interpretation of karma creates something dangerous. It turns life into a cycle of self-blame and quiet emotional punishment. What if the universe does not operate like a courtroom at all? What if there is no judge, no gavel, and no cosmic record keeper waiting to punish you? Imagine instead that reality behaves more like a neutral system of physics. Fire burns your hand not because it hates you, but because that is simply what fire does when skin touches heat. Gravity pulls objects downward not because gravity is angry, but because that is how the system works. In the same way, what many traditions call karma may not be moral judgment. It may be simply the natural consequence of energetic patterns continuing over time. Think of a seed planted in soil. If you plant a chili seed, a chili plant grows. The soil is not angry with you. The earth is not rewarding or punishing you. It is simply responding to what was placed within it. When we apply this perspective to human experience, karma begins to look less like a cosmic punishment and more like unfinished data inside the human system. In both psychological and spiritual traditions, emotional trauma behaves like an incomplete process. When a painful experience is fully felt, understood, and integrated, the emotional energy moves through the body and eventually dissolves. But most people were never taught how to allow that process to happen. Instead of feeling the pain, we suppress it. Instead of processing it, we distract ourselves. Instead of allowing grief, anger, or fear to move through us, we push it down and pretend we are fine. When that happens, the emotional energy does not disappear. It freezes. It becomes trapped in the body, in memory, and in the subtle emotional patterns that shape our reactions to the world. From that perspective, karma is not a punishment and it is not a debt. It is more like a corrupted file in the inner operating system, an unfinished piece of experience waiting to be opened, processed, and finally released. And until that process is completed, the system will keep replaying the same pattern again and again, not to hurt you, but simply because the data has not yet been fully understood. So the real question becomes this: why do the same painful patterns keep repeating in our lives? Why does someone leave one difficult relationship only to find themselves in another one that feels strangely familiar? Why does financial stress seem to return even after a period of stability? Why do certain emotional wounds keep resurfacing, almost as if life is pressing on the same bruise again and again? To understand this, it helps to borrow a concept from physics known as a standing wave. When a wave travels through space and hits a barrier, it reflects back. When the incoming wave and the reflected wave overlap, they can lock into a pattern that vibrates in the same place over and over again. The energy does not move forward anymore. It becomes trapped, oscillating in a fixed position. Something similar can happen inside the human emotional system. When a painful experience occurs, but the emotional energy is never fully processed or released, that experience does not simply disappear. Instead, it can become a kind of standing wave inside the psyche. Imagine someone who experienced abandonment early in life. Decades later, that original emotional imprint may still be vibrating quietly beneath the surface of their awareness. It does not shout, but it hums continuously in the background of their decisions, their reactions, and the people they feel drawn toward. Over time, this creates a phenomenon that many spiritual traditions describe as resonance. In simple terms, resonance means that similar frequencies tend to find each other. This is why you may have heard the phrase, "You do not attract what you want, you attract what you are." A person may consciously desire loyalty, stability, and emotional safety, yet unconsciously carry a frequency shaped by old wounds. And when someone new enters their life, the beginning can feel magical. The connection feels intense, meaningful, almost destined. But eventually, something shifts, and the same emotional script begins to unfold again. The same kind of misunderstanding, the same feeling of distance, the same pattern of hurt. And when that happens, many people respond with anger, resentment, or self-blame. Unfortunately, those reactions often feed the standing wave even more, reinforcing the emotional pattern instead of dissolving it. It is similar to playing a scratched record. You can replace the speakers, change the room, or buy a new sound system, but the music will still skip at the same point because the scratch is on the record itself. In the same way, changing partners, jobs, or cities does not always solve the deeper pattern. Because the standing wave is not out there in the world. It is inside the system, inside the body, the nervous system, the emotional memory stored in the brain and tissues. And once we understand that, we can finally begin to ask a different question. Not, why does this keep happening to me? But where inside me is this pattern still vibrating? At this stage, the conversation takes an important turn because we have to move karma out of the abstract and bring it into something much more tangible, your own body. For many people, karma sounds like a distant spiritual idea, something floating somewhere in the universe. But in reality, the patterns that shape your life are not stored in the sky. They are stored in living biology. In other words, the story of your emotional history is written directly into your tissues. There is a phrase often used in trauma research that captures this idea perfectly. The issues are in your tissues. What it means is that unresolved emotional experiences do not simply live in memory as thoughts. They leave physical traces inside the body itself. For a long time, Western culture assumed that the mind existed only inside the brain. But modern neuroscience and mind-body research have gradually revealed something more complex. The brain may act as the central processor, but the nervous system and subconscious signaling network extend throughout the entire body. Your body is constantly storing, transmitting, and responding to emotional information. One of the scientists who helped bring attention to this connection was Dr. Candace Pert, a neuroscientist whose research on neuropeptides showed that emotions are not just abstract feelings. They are biochemical signals moving through the body. When you experience anger, fear, grief, or love, your body releases specific chemical messengers that travel through tissues and organs, shaping how the body feels and responds. And when emotional experiences are repeatedly suppressed instead of processed, those chemical patterns can begin to accumulate. Over time, the body may begin to hold on to those patterns in very specific places. Chronic anger may create tension in the liver and digestive system. Fear often shows up as tightness in the lower back or kidney area. Grief can appear as heaviness in the chest or difficulty breathing deeply. Emotional heartbreak is often experienced physically around the heart and upper torso. From this perspective, many physical symptoms that seem random, tight muscles, recurring stomach discomfort, persistent fatigue, may actually be the body's way of recording emotional experiences that were never fully resolved. The body is not working against you. It is communicating with you. It is trying to draw your attention to something that still needs care and understanding. This is also why purely mental approaches to healing often fall short. Someone may say, "I've forgiven them," or "I've moved on," but the body may still be carrying the chemistry of anger, grief, or fear beneath the surface. The conscious mind may declare closure, while the deeper biological system still holds the memory. Real healing begins when we stop treating the body like an obstacle and start recognizing it as a living archive of experience. If emotional energy was stored in the body, then healing must also involve the body. It requires allowing the emotional chemistry to move again, to soften, release, and finally complete the process that was interrupted long ago. Now the conversation expands one step further, because understanding the body alone is not enough to explain why certain people and situations keep appearing in your life. The deeper question becomes this: how does something happening silently inside you attract experiences from the outside world? How does an invisible emotional pattern somehow draw the exact circumstances that seem to match it? To explore this, we have to move beyond the physical body and begin talking about the human energy field. Many traditions call it the aura, while modern researchers sometimes describe it in terms of electromagnetic fields. One interesting piece of research often referenced in this discussion comes from the HeartMath Institute, which has studied the electromagnetic activity generated by the human heart. Their findings suggest that the heart produces an electromagnetic field that is thousands of times stronger than the one generated by the brain. This field extends outward from the body and constantly interacts with the environment around you. Whether we describe it spiritually or scientifically, the implication is similar. Your body is not just a biological machine, it is also a transmitter. In that sense, the energetic field around you can be imagined as a kind of living screen displaying the deeper information stored within you. If your inner life contains unresolved emotional experiences, those patterns are not completely hidden. They subtly shape the signals that your nervous system, posture, tone of voice, and emotional presence broadcast into the world. In symbolic language, this is sometimes described as the aura acting like the projection surface of the Akashic Record, the place where internal memory patterns become visible as life experiences. From this perspective, every person is constantly transmitting information about their internal state. Not just occasionally, but continuously, 24 hours a day. The signal might carry messages such as, "I am confident," "I am safe," or in more difficult moments, "I expect rejection," "I fear loss," or "I believe I am not valued." These signals are rarely spoken aloud, yet they still influence the way interactions unfold. When two people meet, their nervous systems begin reading subtle cues almost immediately, long before the first sentence is finished. Body language, emotional tone, eye contact, and unconscious behavioral patterns all participate in a silent exchange of information. In everyday life, this dynamic sometimes becomes visible in surprising ways. For example, people who feel chronically unsafe may repeatedly encounter relationships where boundaries are ignored. Someone who carries deep patterns of distrust may unintentionally attract situations that reinforce that expectation. From this perspective, difficult encounters are not necessarily evidence that the universe is unfair. They may simply be reflections of energetic patterns that have not yet changed. This realization can feel uncomfortable at first because it shifts the focus away from blame. Instead of seeing other people as the sole cause of our experiences, we begin asking a more powerful question: what signals am I unconsciously sending into the world? And once that question appears, the next insight naturally follows. If life is like a film being projected onto the screen of reality, then changing the actors or locations may not change the story. To change the story itself, you must eventually look at the film reel inside the projector. And sometimes that reel carries images not only from your own life, but from generations before you. Up to this point, we've been looking at patterns that appear to belong to your personal life. But what if some of the emotions, fears, and repeating struggles you carry did not actually begin with you? What if parts of your inner world were inherited long before you were born? Many people experience anxieties that seem strangely disproportionate to their current circumstances. Someone may have a constant fear of financial collapse even when they are stable. Another person may feel an unexplained guilt when their life becomes happier or more successful than the lives of their parents or grandparents. In some families, the same type of suffering appears again and again across generations. Similar relationship breakdowns, the same emotional distance between partners, or repeated patterns of sacrifice and silence. From the perspective of the Akashic tradition, these are sometimes described as family patterns carried through the energetic memory of a lineage. They are not random events. They are patterns that travel through generations like an invisible inheritance. Interestingly, modern science has begun exploring ideas that echo this perspective. The field of epigenetics studies how life experiences can influence the way genes behave without changing the DNA code itself. One well-known experiment from Emory University demonstrated this phenomenon using mice. Researchers exposed a generation of mice to a specific scent, cherry blossom, while pairing it with a mild electric shock. The mice learned to fear the smell. What surprised researchers was that their offspring, who had never experienced the shock themselves, still showed signs of fear when exposed to the same scent. In other words, a memory of danger appeared to travel across generations. When we apply this idea to human experience, it suggests that some fears and emotional reflexes may be rooted in events that occurred long before our own lives began. The fear of scarcity, the urge to overprotect resources, distrust toward authority, emotional numbness, or patterns of silence in relationships may sometimes reflect the survival strategies of earlier generations. In that sense, part of what you are experiencing today may not belong only to your individual story. It may also be the continuation of emotional programs written by your ancestors. Within the symbolic language of the Akashic field, this means that your personal record does not exist in isolation. It carries fragments of a much larger family archive. And recognizing that possibility opens the door to the next realization. Sometimes what looks like your struggle is actually an unconscious loyalty to those who came before you. Now we arrive at one of the most emotionally powerful dynamics hidden inside family systems: unconscious loyalty. Many people assume that when someone repeats painful patterns in life, it must be because they are weak, careless, or unable to change. But in many cases, something much deeper is happening beneath the surface. Human beings carry an extremely powerful biological need to belong. For a child, belonging to the family is not just emotional comfort, it is survival. At a very early age, the nervous system learns a silent rule: if I lose connection with my family, I will not survive. Because of this, children often make unconscious emotional agreements that follow them into adulthood. A child watching a parent suffer may silently conclude, if my mother had to endure this pain, then I must endure it too. Not out of logic, but out of love and loyalty. Imagine a child growing up in a home where a parent remained trapped in a painful marriage. Even without words, the child may internalize the message that love means sacrifice and endurance. Years later, as an adult, that same person may find themselves repeating similar relationship patterns, not because they consciously want pain, but because a deeper part of them believes that mirroring the family's experience is a way of staying connected to it. Sometimes this pattern becomes even more subtle. When someone's life begins to improve beyond what previous generations experienced, a strange sense of guilt can appear. Psychologists sometimes call this survivor's guilt. A person may feel uncomfortable being happier, more successful, or more emotionally free than their parents or grandparents were. And without realizing it, they may sabotage opportunities or create conflict just when things start going well, pulling themselves back into the familiar emotional territory of struggle. This is one of the quiet tragedies of unconscious love. We repeat the pain of those who came before us because, at a deep level, we believe that sharing their suffering is a way of staying loyal to them. But the truth is that real love does not require repeating the wound. And sometimes it only takes one person who becomes aware of the pattern to gently end the cycle that has continued for generations. At this moment in the conversation, everything begins to shift from explanation to identity. Because if you have been listening this far, a deeper question naturally appears. Why are you the one hearing this message right now? Why not your parents? Why not your siblings, your relatives, or the people who grew up beside you? Why did life place this awareness in your path and not theirs? Many people who begin questioning family patterns share a quiet feeling that they have carried for years, the sense that they never fully belonged in the environment they grew up in. They may love their family deeply, yet still feel different, as if they were somehow wired to see things that others could not see. For a long time, that feeling can be interpreted as isolation or even as a mistake, as if you were born into the wrong story. But what if that feeling has a completely different meaning? What if you are not the one who doesn't belong, but the one who was meant to change the pattern? In many spiritual traditions, there is a concept sometimes called the chain breaker, the person in a family line who becomes aware of inherited suffering and chooses to transform it rather than pass it forward. From this perspective, the struggles you faced in the early part of your life were not designed to destroy you. They were shaping your awareness. Pain has a strange ability to push people toward deeper questions about meaning, healing, and truth. And once someone begins that search, they often become the first person in the family system willing to look at the pattern directly. There is a powerful metaphor often used in physics called entanglement. When two particles become linked, a change in one can influence the other even at a distance. In a symbolic sense, something similar may happen within families. When one person shifts their inner state, when they release old emotional patterns and stop repeating inherited pain, that change can ripple outward through the system. In other words, when you heal something inside yourself, you are not only transforming your own life, you may also be freeing your ancestors from patterns they never had the chance to resolve and preventing those patterns from being passed to the next generation. The greatest inheritance you can leave behind may not be wealth or status, but a lineage that is emotionally lighter, freer, and more conscious than the one you received. And sometimes that transformation begins with a simple but powerful declaration. I honor the path of those who came before me, but I choose to walk forward in a different way. Now we arrive at the first real practice in this journey of breaking unconscious patterns, and it begins with a principle borrowed from physics that has fascinated scientists for decades: the observer effect. In quantum mechanics, there is an idea that a wave of potential possibilities collapses into a measurable particle when it is observed. In other words, the act of observation itself changes the behavior of what is being observed. While the physics behind this idea is complex, the metaphor it offers for inner work is incredibly powerful. Because in the landscape of the human mind, karma behaves very much like an unresolved wave of emotional energy. It is not a punishment imposed from outside. It is a pattern of energy moving through memory, emotion, and nervous system responses. These waves exist in the subconscious, shaping behavior quietly, often without our awareness. The reason many of these patterns persist for years, sometimes even decades, is not because they are impossible to heal. They persist because most people never truly observe them. Instead of looking directly at emotional pain, we develop sophisticated strategies to escape it. We distract ourselves with constant activity. We scroll endlessly on our phones. We bury ourselves in work. We rationalize what happened or force ourselves to move on. And when those strategies fail, we often judge ourselves for still feeling what we feel. Ironically, every one of these reactions feeds the pattern rather than dissolving it. Running away strengthens the chase. Resisting a feeling gives it more energy. Even hating the pattern can become another form of attachment. In that sense, reaction becomes the fuel that keeps the karmic loop alive. This is why the first step of real healing is surprisingly simple but deeply challenging: pure presence. Instead of analyzing the emotion, fixing it, or covering it with positive thoughts, you allow yourself to simply sit with what is there. You observe the experience without immediately reacting to it. This requires a subtle but important shift in language and perspective. Instead of saying, "I am anxious" or "I am sad," you begin to notice the experience more carefully and say something like, "I am observing a sensation of anxiety moving through my body." That small change creates space between your identity and the emotion itself. Once that space exists, the next step is to direct your attention with curiosity rather than judgment. Where exactly do you feel this emotion in your body? Is it tight, heavy, warm, or restless? Does it move or stay still? Does it have a shape, a pressure, or a rhythm? You are not trying to change the feeling. You are simply shining the light of awareness on it, the way a flashlight illuminates a dark room. Over time, something remarkable begins to happen. The emotional wave that once felt overwhelming begins to lose its momentum. Without resistance, without suppression, and without constant reaction, the energy slowly dissipates. What once felt like a storm becomes a passing weather pattern. In this way, observation becomes the doorway through which unresolved experiences can finally complete themselves. The truth is that emotional pain itself rarely destroys a person. What exhausts us is the constant effort to avoid it. When we finally stop running and allow ourselves to witness what is already there, the system begins to reorganize. The wave softens, the loop weakens, and the first real opening toward freedom appears. Now we arrive at the second healing practice introduced in this journey, and it may be one of the most misunderstood tools in modern spiritual culture: Ho'oponopono. Many people have heard the 4 famous phrases associated with it, yet very few understand the deeper purpose behind them. In its original context, Ho'oponopono is not simply a ritual of apologizing to someone else, nor is it a passive act of asking the universe for mercy. At a deeper level, it functions more like a conscious reset command within the human system, a way of clearing the emotional data that continues to replay beneath awareness. In that sense, Ho'oponopono can be understood as a form of inner reprogramming. It works not by changing the external world directly, but by dissolving the emotional memory patterns stored within the body and mind. Some modern teachers, including Dr. Iheliakala Hew Lin, have described this process as a way of clearing subconscious memories that shape our experiences. The practice is often expressed through 4 simple phrases, but each one carries a specific psychological function. The first phrase, "I'm sorry," is frequently misunderstood as an admission of moral guilt. In reality, it represents a moment of radical responsibility. Instead of blaming circumstances or other people, you acknowledge that something within your internal system, an old emotional memory, belief, or reaction, has contributed to the experience you are facing. The second phrase, "Please forgive me," is not about asking another person for forgiveness. It is an invitation directed inward, asking your deeper subconscious and even your own body to participate in releasing the stored pattern. It is a request for cooperation between the conscious mind and the deeper layers of the nervous system. The third phrase, "Thank you," may seem surprising in the middle of pain. Yet gratitude changes the emotional frequency of the experience. Instead of remaining trapped in resentment or victimhood, you begin to appreciate the moment as an opportunity to see what was previously hidden. In that sense, gratitude transforms the experience from punishment into information. Finally, the phrase, "I love you," represents the most powerful element of the process. Love, in this context, is not sentimental emotion but a stabilizing state of acceptance that allows tension within the system to soften and release. When these elements come together, the goal is not simply emotional relief but a return to what some traditions call 0 point, a state of inner neutrality where old emotional recordings lose their influence. In that quiet space, the mind is no longer reacting to past memories, and new possibilities can begin to emerge. Now we move into the most immersive part of this journey, where the ideas we've discussed begin to transform into a direct inner experience. This section is designed as a guided meditation that helps the mind and body reconnect with deeper layers of memory and awareness. The purpose is not to escape reality, but to gently access the internal landscape where emotional patterns, early experiences, and inherited beliefs are stored. To begin, bring your attention to your breathing. Allow your body to settle wherever you are sitting. Take a slow breath in through the nose, filling your lungs fully, and then release it gently through the mouth. With every breath, feel your shoulders soften and your body become a little heavier, as if gravity itself is helping you relax. Continue breathing slowly and naturally, allowing the mind to quiet. As your breathing becomes steady, imagine that you are standing at the top of a staircase made of soft golden light. This staircase has 10 steps leading downward, and each step brings you deeper into a calm and safe inner space. As you begin descending, count slowly in your mind. With each number, feel your body relaxing more deeply. 10, 9, 8, moving gently downward. 7, 6, 5, the outside world becoming quieter and more distant. 4, 3, 2, and finally 1. At the bottom of the staircase, you arrive at a peaceful inner place that represents the library of your soul, the symbolic space where memories, experiences, and emotional impressions are stored. As you look around this quiet inner landscape, you may notice an area that feels dimmer than the rest, a corner that carries a sense of sadness or heaviness. Slowly walk toward that space. As you approach, you see a small child sitting quietly, curled inward as if protecting themselves. This is your inner child, the younger version of you who once experienced confusion, fear, or loneliness, and had to carry emotions that were too heavy for such a small person to hold alone. As you kneel beside this child, notice that they are wearing a large backpack. It looks far too heavy for them. Inside this backpack are the emotional burdens that have been passed down through generations. Perhaps anger that belonged to a father who never learned how to express his pain, fear carried by a mother who had to survive difficult circumstances, or unspoken sadness inherited from earlier family stories. The child has been carrying this weight for a long time, not because they chose to, but because they believed that holding it would keep them loved and accepted. Gently place a hand on the child's shoulder and speak with kindness. Let them know that these fears and burdens do not belong to them. Tell them they were never meant to carry the emotional weight of an entire family history. Slowly lift the backpack from their shoulders and hold it in your hands. Imagine a soft stream of light descending from above, surrounding the backpack with warmth and clarity. As the light touches it, the heavy emotional energy begins to dissolve, transforming into something lighter and calmer. When the backpack is finally empty, set it aside and embrace the child, allowing them to feel safe, supported, and free. Now, in this inner space, imagine walking forward into another room. This room is lined with reflective surfaces, almost like mirrors, representing moments and relationships that shaped your emotional life. Invite into this room the person who caused you deep emotional pain in the past. See them standing across from you. As you observe them, imagine viewing them through a compassionate lens, recognizing that behind their actions may have been their own unresolved pain. Notice that between you and this person there is a dark cord or chain, symbolizing the emotional attachment that has kept the experience active in your life. Rather than reacting with anger, allow yourself to acknowledge the lesson that this experience revealed. Quietly repeat the phrases of Ho'oponopono: I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Each phrase gently releases tension from the connection. As the words settle, imagine a radiant blue light appearing beside you in the shape of a luminous sword. With calm intention, lift this sword and allow it to gently cut the cord between you and the other person. As the cord dissolves into light, feel a sense of spaciousness returning to your body. The emotional contract that once bound the two of you has now completed its purpose. The other person slowly fades from the room, leaving you standing in a calm and open space. Now direct your attention upward once more. Imagine a waterfall of brilliant white light pouring down from above, entering through the crown of your head and flowing slowly through your entire body. This light moves through your brain, your chest, your spine, and into every cell. Where there were areas that once felt heavy or dim, the light begins to brighten them again. Imagine this light touching even the deepest biological layers of your body, gently restoring balance and clarity. Within this visualization, the body begins to shift from patterns of fear and scarcity toward feelings of safety, strength, and openness. Place your hands over your heart or gently around your arms and thank your body for carrying you through every experience that brought you here. Allow gratitude to reach every cell. When you feel ready, begin returning slowly to your physical awareness. Imagine yourself stepping back toward the staircase and counting upward from 1 to 5. 1. Your breath becoming more present. 2. Feeling the weight of your body again. 3. Becoming aware of the room around you. 4. Gently moving your fingers or shoulders. And 5. Opening your eyes when you are ready. After a meditation like this, it is normal to notice different emotional or physical responses as the body processes what it experienced. Some people feel calm, others feel reflective, or even emotional. All of these reactions can be understood as signs that the system is reorganizing and releasing tension. Give yourself time to integrate the experience. Drinking warm water, resting, or taking a quiet walk can help the body settle. Remember that healing is rarely a single moment. It is a gradual process of creating new patterns within the mind and nervous system. Practicing this type of reflection regularly, even for a few minutes each day, can help reinforce healthier emotional pathways over time. And as this process continues, you may carry one simple affirmation with you. I have released what no longer belongs to me, and I am free to move forward. Now we move into the most immersive part of this journey, where the ideas we've discussed begin to transform into a direct inner experience. This section is designed as a guided meditation that helps the mind and body reconnect with deeper layers of memory and awareness. The purpose is not to escape reality, but to gently access the internal landscape where emotional patterns, early experiences, and inherited beliefs are stored. To begin, bring your attention to your breathing. Allow your body to settle wherever you are sitting. Take a slow breath in through the nose, filling your lungs fully, and then release it gently through the mouth. With every breath, feel your shoulders soften and your body become a little heavier, as if gravity itself is helping you relax. Continue breathing slowly and naturally, allowing the mind to quiet. As your breathing becomes steady, imagine that you are standing at the top of a staircase made of soft golden light. This staircase has 10 steps leading downward, and each step brings you deeper into a calm and safe inner space. As you begin descending, count slowly in your mind. With each number, feel your body relaxing more deeply. 10, 9, 8, moving gently downward. 7, 6, 5, the outside world becoming quieter and more distant. 4, 3, 2, and finally 1. At the bottom of the staircase, you arrive at a peaceful inner place that represents the library of your soul, the symbolic space where memories, experiences, and emotional impressions are stored. As you look around this quiet inner landscape, you may notice an area that feels dimmer than the rest, a corner that carries a sense of sadness or heaviness. Slowly walk toward that space. As you approach, you see a small child sitting quietly, curled inward as if protecting themselves. This is your inner child, the younger version of you who once experienced confusion, fear, or loneliness, and had to carry emotions that were too heavy for such a small person to hold alone. As you kneel beside this child, notice that they are wearing a large backpack. It looks far too heavy for them. Inside this backpack are the emotional burdens that have been passed down through generations. Perhaps anger that belonged to a father who never learned how to express his pain, fear carried by a mother who had to survive difficult circumstances, or unspoken sadness inherited from earlier family stories. The child has been carrying this weight for a long time, not because they chose to, but because they believed that holding it would keep them loved and accepted. Gently place a hand on the child's shoulder and speak with kindness. Let them know that these fears and burdens do not belong to them. Tell them they were never meant to carry the emotional weight of an entire family history. Slowly lift the backpack from their shoulders and hold it in your hands. Imagine a soft stream of light descending from above, surrounding the backpack with warmth and clarity. As the light touches it, the heavy emotional energy begins to dissolve, transforming into something lighter and calmer. When the backpack is finally empty, set it aside and embrace the child, allowing them to feel safe, supported, and free. Now, in this inner space, imagine walking forward into another room. This room is lined with reflective surfaces, almost like mirrors, representing moments and relationships that shaped your emotional life. Invite into this room the person who caused you deep emotional pain in the past. See them standing across from you. As you observe them, imagine viewing them through a compassionate lens, recognizing that behind their actions may have been their own unresolved pain. Notice that between you and this person there is a dark cord or chain, symbolizing the emotional attachment that has kept the experience active in your life. Rather than reacting with anger, allow yourself to acknowledge the lesson that this experience revealed. Quietly repeat the phrases of Ho'oponopono. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Each phrase gently releases tension from the connection. As the words settle, imagine a radiant blue light appearing beside you in the shape of a luminous sword. With calm intention, lift this sword and allow it to gently cut the cord between you and the other person. As the cord dissolves into light, feel a sense of spaciousness returning to your body. The emotional contract that once bound the two of you has now completed its purpose. The other person slowly fades from the room, leaving you standing in a calm and open space. Now direct your attention upward once more. Imagine a waterfall of brilliant white light pouring down from above, entering through the crown of your head and flowing slowly through your entire body. This light moves through your brain, your chest, your spine, and into every cell. Where there were areas that once felt heavy or dim, the light begins to brighten them again. Imagine this light touching even the deepest biological layers of your body, gently restoring balance and clarity. Within this visualization, the body begins to shift from patterns of fear and scarcity toward feelings of safety, strength, and openness. Place your hands over your heart or gently around your arms and thank your body for carrying you through every experience that brought you here. Allow gratitude to reach every cell. When you feel ready, begin returning slowly to your physical awareness. Imagine yourself stepping back toward the staircase and counting upward from 1 to 5. 1. Your breath becoming more present. 2. Feeling the weight of your body again. 3. Becoming aware of the room around you. 4. Gently moving your fingers or shoulders. And 5. Opening your eyes when you are ready. After a meditation like this, It is normal to notice different emotional or physical responses as the body processes what it experienced. Some people feel calm, others feel reflective or even emotional. All of these reactions can be understood as signs that the system is reorganizing and releasing tension. Give yourself time to integrate the experience. Drinking warm water, resting, or taking a quiet walk can help the body settle. Remember that healing is rarely a single moment. It is a gradual process of creating new patterns within the mind and nervous system. Practicing this type of reflection regularly, even for a few minutes each day, can help reinforce healthier emotional pathways over time. And as this process continues, you may carry one simple affirmation with you. I have released what no longer belongs to me, and I am free to move forward. As we reach the end of this journey, one truth becomes clear. The patterns that repeat in your life are not random, and they are not permanent. What once felt like destiny may simply have been unfinished emotional data waiting for awareness. When you begin observing your inner world with honesty, when you release old emotional contracts, and when you choose compassion over unconscious reaction, something remarkable happens. The script of your life begins to change. The real lesson is not that life will suddenly become perfect, but that you are no longer powerless inside it. Every moment becomes an opportunity to respond with clarity instead of old programming. In practical terms, this means pausing before reacting, noticing what emotion is moving through your body, and remembering that you now have the ability to choose a different direction. The past may have shaped the first chapters of your story, but it does not have to write the rest of it. And if this message resonated with you today, take a moment to anchor that awareness by leaving a short comment below, perhaps something simple like, I choose freedom, or the cycle ends with me. Your words might inspire someone else who is walking the same path. And if you found value in this conversation, consider subscribing to the Inner Code so we can continue exploring ideas that help us understand ourselves and the deeper patterns of life. Your support helps this channel keep creating meaningful content, and I look forward to sharing the next journey with you.